Have you ever dreamt of becoming a millionaire in the zone? What if I told you there's a secret to becoming the wealthiest stalker in the zone without risking your life? Just like any other economy, basic financial principles shape how things work in the zone. Resources like artifacts, medical supplies, and ammunition are common items that keep the market running. The rarer the item, the more it's worth, and as the zone gets more dangerous, prices only go up. Hello everyone, this is the Dark One speaking from the depths of the zone. So what's so special about the zone's economy? Well, it's a complex blend of barter systems, black markets, and survivalist trading, all operating without a centralized authority. Let's break it down and see what it is all about. Money in the zone isn't your typical cash. Sure, the ruble is the standard currency, but its value fluctuates wildly. With the collapse of formal economies, STALKER often find more value in goods than in cash itself. This brings us to our first concept, the barter economy. In a world where trust is scarce and survival is paramount, tangible goods like ammunition, food, and medical supplies often hold more value than paper money. This mirrors real-world economic situations in failed states or during hyperinflation, where currency loses its buying power and people revert to trading goods and services directly. Sidorovich is one of the first traders you encounter in the zone. He operates from a well-fortified bunker in the cordon, near the entry point of the zone. His connections make him a crucial figure in the zone's black market. He has ties to both stalkers and the military, allowing him to manipulate the flow of goods, while Sidorovich operates within the economic realm, focusing on trade and profit. Other stalkers prioritize combat and survival skills necessary for their day-to-day existence in the zone. Despite his gruff, opportunistic nature, he's essential for new stalkers to get the gear they need to survive when they begin their journey in the zone. So let's dive deeper into the subject and start with some expensive speculation. In real life, the CNPP had a price tag of around $2 billion when it was constructed, which adjusted for inflation would be around $5.1 billion today. Let's also assume you wanted to buy the CNPP without the monolith inside of it, of course. Let's assume you go artifact hunting every single day and catch around 3 artifacts every single day. Artifacts usually vary in price, with some being more expensive than others, but let's also assume every single artifact costs an average of around 7,500 rubles. Let's also assume you save every single penny you get from artifact hunting. It would then take you around 930 years of daily artifact hunting in order to buy the CNPP. A more than reasonable price tag to pay in order to own a piece of the zone. In order to find out how much money there is in the zone, however, it is important to note that the various factions are at different economic levels, and some organizations inside of the zone are smaller than others. For example, Duty is a militarized faction that believes the zone is a dangerous threat to humanity and their mission is to contain it. Their strict authoritarian approach affects their economics in several ways, since its operations rely heavily on structured funding, either from external sources like military backers or from taxing trade and scavenging activities within the areas they control. They focus on building heavily fortified bases, which in turn allows for more efficient control. Moreover, factions like Duty and Freedom create tensions that influences trade routes, with certain areas becoming hotspots for economic activity due to their strategic importance or safety. The Duty base in Rostock, in particular, holds a significant position inside of the zone. The demand for safety and stability within the zone is very high, and Duty's base in Rostock positions it as the prime supplier of these services. Being centrally located, the Rostock base allows Duty to function as a central hub for both military and economic activities. This centrality gives Duty the ability to project more power, efficiently across the zone and respond quickly to threats or opportunities in the adjacent areas. It essentially acts as a command and control center for their operations, providing them with a strategic advantage in terms of logistics and troop deployment. It provides duty with control over the flow of stalkers and goods, functioning as a checkpoint for movement to the bar, wild territory, and army warehouses. Duty can exert pressure on traders and factions that depend on traversing the zone's central pathways, allowing them to engage in rent-seeking behavior and economic dominance. The interplay between supply and demand is ever present in the zone, as for example, more mercenaries enter an area, the competition drives prices down, but scarcity, whether due to emissions or increased military activity, can cause prices to skyrocket. While the zone feels like a world unto itself, it isn't completely isolated from the rest of society. The zone remains connected to the outside world through several checkpoints, but also through its currency. In the Stalker universe, there's no explicit mention of where the rubles used in the zone are printed. However, since the zone is located in Ukraine but uses the Russian ruble, it's likely that the currency is brought into the zone from outside sources as part of broader trade routes and black market dealings with the outside world. The Russian ruble is printed and managed by the Central Bank of Russia, specifically by its subsidiary, the Goznak Corporation. Goznak is responsible for the production of banknotes, coins, passports, and other secure documents for the Russian Federation. It is possible that the zone exists in a gray area of governance, with various factions and mercenaries operating outside of Ukrainian control. The use of the ruble might signify the independence and lawlessness of the zone, with no formal alignment with Ukraine's official currency. There are also hints throughout the game that many stalkers, military personnel, and possibly even monolith forces have Russian connections. This Russian influence could explain why the ruble is the de facto currency. On the other hand, we have the mercenaries faction, who seem to be of Western origin. Mercenaries play a crucial role in the zone's economy, hired for protection, scouting, or even assassination. They charge varying rates based on experience and reputation. A seasoned mercenary might demand a lot of money for a contract, whereas a rookie could be significantly cheaper. Their presence not only provides security for traders and other stalkers, but also contributes to the volatility of prices, especially in contested areas like Pripyat. There is, however, one thing all people in the zone share in common: their basic necessities. The zone isn't just active during certain seasons, it sees continuous activity all year round. Signs like lumber stored next to houses indicate that people prepare for and withstand the winter months using wood for heating and cooking. The availability of food is also limited and often heavily priced due to dangers of transporting anything in the zone. Basic provisions like canned goods or bread are sourced from outside of the zone. The most common and relatively safe, boar meat, is probably the most edible and frequently hunted. Stalkers can roast it over a fire, and it's usually a reliable source of protein in the zone. It is, after all, the closest thing to normal pork you'll find. When it comes to the cost of food in the zone, wildlife like boars, flesh, and even mutant dogs can be much cheaper compared to imported food from the outside. Hunting your own meat, while dangerous, is essentially free aside from the risk to your life and ammunition costs. Stalkers who know how to cook and prepare these creatures have a clear survival advantage and can avoid the steep prices of outside sourced food. Local hunting allows stalkers to survive with minimal expenses, but the quality, safety, and taste of mutant meat are a constant trade-off. Outsiders and wealthier factions like duty or mercenaries may pay more for fresh imported food for safety reasons, while loners and rookie stalkers tend to rely on the wildlife of the zone, keeping their daily expenses lower but least risking health and exposure to radiation. Let's break down what a farming operation on the outskirts of the zone would actually look like. First off, You'd need to prepare the land and treat the soil before anything else. Basic fertilizers and soil treatment will cost around $300 per hectare. If we're working with a 10-hectare plot, that adds up to a solid $3,000 right there. Next, we've got water. With no access to pre-existing irrigation systems, you'd need to dig up your own wells and set up pumps. Each pump may cost around $2,500. And for our 10 hectares, we'll need at least 2 pumps, putting us at $5,000 just for water. Now, how are we even powering these pumps? Solar energy might just be a viable option in the zone to avoid the costs and risks associated with bringing in a fuel. A basic solar setup will run us around $15,000, but it doesn't stop there. To protect our crops, we'll need fencing and some basic surveillance to keep out looters and wildlife. For a plot this size, it'll cost $1,000 per hectare. That's another $10,000. So for just the initial setup, land treatment, water, solar power and protection, we're looking at $33,000. Now let's talk about yearly expenses. Seeds alone will cost $200 per kilogram, and we'll need 50 kilograms to start. That's $10,000 just to get the crops planted each year. Maintenance for the water pumps and irrigation system, $1,500 every month, so that's $18,000 annually. Solar panel upkeep, add another $1,000 per year. But here's where it gets really expensive: security. Hiring a squad of 5 mercenaries to guard our farm 24/7 will cost a whopping $200 a day. That means for a full year, we're shelling out $365,000 just to keep the place safe. Altogether, our yearly maintenance costs will total $394,000. But you might be wondering, what about revenue? Let's say each hectare generates $5,000 in crop revenue per year. For a 10-hectare plot, that's $50,000 a year. And that sounds nice until you realize it doesn't even come close to covering the costs. In the first year, we're at a loss of $377,000, and every subsequent year, we'd still be losing $344,000. So you might be wondering, why the crazy losses? It's all due to security. Hiring mercenaries to keep your farm safe in a place as dangerous as the zone isn't cheap. To even hope for a profit, you'd have to either drastically reduce your production costs or somehow get premium prices for your produce. And while sure, there are a few potential solutions, you could hire less experienced stalkers for security, but that increases your risk. You could try to sell at a higher price by producing rare or high quality crops, but that's tough without greenhouses. Or you could partner with factions like Duty or Freedom, outsourcing your security to them at a potentially lower rate. But in reality, even with no greenhouse costs, the security expenses alone make running a farm in the zone an unprofitable venture, unless you're able to negotiate lower security fees or find a premium market for your crops. You're stuck in a losing situation. There's no getting out of here. However, drug production, on the other hand, doesn't need a lot of land and thus could be easier made in the zone. Producing drugs in the zone could in theory be an extremely profitable operation due to the lack of law enforcement and unique resources available. The zone is also full of anomalous materials and rare plant species that could serve as potent ingredients or enhancers for drug production. In my opinion, some artifacts like the firefly or the goldfish could theoretically be refined into performance-enhancing substances, narcotics, or experimental medical drugs. Using such ingredients could create a high demand for a product that can be found anywhere else in the world. And while sure, the security risks are still high, the profit margin of drugs is also large enough to cover them and make a drug operation profitable. Now, This goes for products. Services are also just as important in the zone, and there is plenty to choose from. Many traders and NPCs offer information services. They share valuable info about enemy locations, artifact spawns, and stash locations. Certain specialists can modify weapons and gear, enhancing performance and durability. You may also encounter medics or characters offering first aid services. They can provide healing items or treat injuries for a price. There's also guides which are critical for helping players navigate the treacherous environments of the zone. In terms of transport, economies of scale would encourage traders and factions to invest in better logistics instead of relying on risky, small-scale operations. They might establish more reliable routes, use better vehicles, or even hire stalker escorts in bulk to ensure safe passage. Imagine a faction being able to move large shipments of goods or even hazardous materials across the zone. The more they transport at once, the lower the cost per item due to the spreading of fixed costs, fuel, personnel, vehicle maintenance over a large quantity of goods. Is the value of money inherently tied to its ability to facilitate freedom, or does it serve to constrain freedom by creating dependencies? Consider the stalkers who venture into the zone seeking valuable artifacts. Money, in this case, acts as a facilitator of freedom. It enables stalkers to acquire essential supplies, weapons, and protective gear, allowing them to navigate the dangerous terrain and survive in a hostile environment. However, this freedom comes at a cost. The need for money can also constrain stalkers, creating a cycle of dependency. The very pursuit of money in the zone is keeping them inside of it. Congratulations, stalker! After diving deep into the economics of the zone, you now hold the keys to unlock your fortune. If you found value in this video, don't forget to hit that like button.